Okay, now that you know, or you have a fair idea at least, of the basic template for a walk cycle, I'm going to show you in this video my process for applying that template to a character like this one. So the very first thing that I always do is I want to make guides for the ground plane so that his feet will be consistently on the ground. I don't want them sliding around or have him floating or anything like that. And I'll also make a guide for the top of his head like this. Okay, and then I can come down to the layers. I'll drag the guide layer to the bottom. Now I'm going to move the whole rig over here because he's going to actually be moving forward in this animation. And once I have him in place, now I'm just going to put this character rig basically into a pose where he's taking a step. So I want to make my first contact position. Remember, in the contact pose, both feet are on the ground and his arms are in opposition to the legs. So the left arm here is going to be going forwards because that left leg is going back. I just want him to look like he's basically taking a step. He's sort of in mid-step, if you like. Now at this point, I'm just realizing that I should have actually moved the whole of the right arm below all of the other layers, even the pelvis and the leg. So I'm going to fix that really quick, then it's done, and I don't have to worry about it. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to continue. So that arm is actually swung back like that so that we don't actually see it because it's behind his body. Okay, great, that looks good. Next, I want to make my second contact position. So I'm going to come forward in the timeline, and at frame 13, I'm going to click and drag my cursor all the way through the entire stack of layers. Then I'm going to come up and hit that keyframe button, and now everything on this rig is keyframed for frame 13. I just need to simply drag everything over on the stage so that he's actually gone forwards. But I want to make sure, obviously, that his feet still match up. So I want that left foot there to match up with the first one. You can see that when I move anything, I'm selecting by just either clicking and dragging around the whole item, and I either use V or Q on my keyboard, and then I can change the position. I usually use V, which is the selection tool, to select the item, and then I'll hit Q to rotate it. Okay, so that arm goes back and this hidden arm goes forward. Here I do need to actually select the keyframes in the timeline in order to move it because I can't grab it on the stage. That looks pretty good though. It's definitely moving forwards. Okay, so next is the passing pose. At frame 7, I'm going to click and drag through all of the layers and then hit the keyframe button so that everything gets keyframed at that point. And then I'll turn onion skin on and I'm going to change the position into a passing pose. Remember, that's where the standing leg is straight. The body is going to be slightly higher than the first contact position, and his back leg is now going to be swinging forwards. The arms are now down by his side. So I can change the shape of this and rotate that lower arm slightly. Then I'll move that hidden arm just slightly forwards into view. They're not wide at this point. I'm going to keep them still quite close in. Okay, the next pose that I'm going to do is the second position, that's the down, and this pose after the contact pose is where the front foot slaps down on the ground. His knee is supposed to be bending, and his back leg is also bending. You can see with this very stylized character, I'm really doing the best I can to make it look like the legs are bending at the knees. It's a bit of a cheat, but that's okay. It's going to read perfectly fine when the final animation's finished. And in this pose, the arms are at the widest. And again, because of the limitations of the design, all I'm going to do is rotate the lower arm up ever so slightly like this. Nothing drastic, but it gives the impression that that arm is swinging forwards. Okay, that's awesome. The next pose is the up position. That comes after this middle passing pose. So at frame 9, click and drag through all of my layers to make keyframes for that frame, for frame 9, and then go up to the stage and create the pose. Remember, in the up position, he needs to be almost on his toes, as if on that standing leg. So I can even rotate it like this. And then move that back leg forwards. So that's coming forwards. It's the one that's coming into land in front of him. Then I'm going to grab the whole of his upper body and just nudge it slightly upwards to make sure that he's a little bit higher than the previous pose. And his arms are starting to swing outwards like this. Perfect. Okay, those are all the poses for the main key poses. All I need to do is to create two in-betweens. I need an in-between at frame 5 and one at frame 11. And by in-between, I mean I'm not changing the trajectory or the timing of anything here. This is a straightforward pose that needs to be exactly halfway between the two poses on the other side. You'll see that in a walk, because the arms and the legs are all moving at different timings, you do actually need all 4 main poses to be your key poses. And then after that, you really just need 2 sort of in-between poses like this. Okay, the last one is at frame 11 as he comes back into land for contact. So in this one, his foot hasn't quite reached the ground yet. His upper body is still halfway between the passing pose and the contact. And I'm just nudging the arm ever so slightly. Hopefully you can see with the onion skin turned on that you can see the before and after pose that's ghosted out there. That's very useful to find your halfway point. And now I've got one step and it looks great. There's nothing jumping out, nothing is hugely wrong or anything. So I'm very happy with that. I will move on and animate the second step. Now the second step is no more complicated at all than the first. So hopefully you have at least a clear understanding of, again, all those 4 main poses and also how to create keyframes and adjust the rig for each of those 4 positions. To start my second step, I'm going to copy the exact pose of the very first contact position and just drag the keyframes out to frame 25. Now that gives me the end pose of the second step. And I can drag the character into position on my stage. But I'm not going to copy any of the other poses. I'm going to animate each one since for the second step, each of the legs and arms are switched around. So if I were to do a third and fourth step, then I could easily just copy each set of keyframes and move the rig over on the stage, if that makes sense. As I said, my workflow is the exact same. I'm going to do the passing pose first, since that's the middle position of the walk. So that's going to be at frame 19. Then I'm going to follow that with the down pose at frame number 15, creating keyframes in the exact same way and adjusting the rig into position for that pose. Then at frame 21, it's the up position. Then at frame 17, I can make the in-between pose between the down position and the passing position. And the final pose is at frame 23, the in-between that goes between the up and the last contact. So great, everything's done. The very last thing that I'll do is select all of the frames at frame number 25 and just drag them back one frame in the timeline because I had too many frames there. I only actually needed to go as far as frame 24. So let's see how this looks. I'll go back to frame 1, hit enter, and there's a great little pirate walk. It's a very jolly, jaunty walk. I think it works great. Perfect. So why don't you pause this video and practice this method of making a walk? It's a really good way to learn the poses and the timing. In the next video, you'll learn how to animate a walk so that it loops, and you'll learn how to animate that with tweens.